It was supposed to be a simple funeral, a day of grief and final farewells. But instead, it turned into the first step of a twisted game I would play for months. When I stepped into that church, my mind wasn't on the loss of a man I once called a friend, Bob. No, I had a different agenda, something that would lead me down a path I never expected. What happened next would make even the most hardened criminals squirm. And me? I was just getting started. The weight of the moment didn't hit me as I walked into the funeral home. No, my focus was somewhere else, on the woman who had shattered everything I once held dear. The woman who still thought she could control the narrative. Kathy, the one who had turned our family into dust. The casket in front of me? That wasn't the reason I was here. Bob, her new lover, lay there lifeless. But in my mind, he wasn't the issue. I had a vendetta against someone else, the woman who destroyed our marriage. A woman who had made my life hell. Kathy. I had been preparing for this moment for months. It wasn't about Bob or even the funeral. It was about something far more sinister. As I stood there staring at Bob's motionless body, a slow smirk crept across my face. I had my reasons for doing what I did, but it wasn't about justice. It was about vengeance. Sweet, beautiful vengeance. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came when Kathy screamed. She was the only one in the room who seemed shocked by my actions, but I didn't care. At that moment, I had a satisfaction running through my veins that I hadn't felt in years. Watching her squirm, watching her face contort with horror, it was a feeling I would savor for a long time. The spit was symbolic, a gesture of disgust, of disdain. It was a sign that I was done being the nice guy. I was done being the fool. I had been there for her when she needed someone, and this was how she repaid me. She left me for him. Kathy, at the time, seemed to think I still cared for her. Maybe she thought I was trying to get back into her life. But no, my goal was simple. I wanted to break her, to tear her down until she felt every ounce of pain she had caused me. I heard her sobs, and I savored every single one of them. It wasn't just grief, it was guilt. Guilt for what she'd done. And me? I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. A month passed, and my dealings with Kathy had only just begun. She didn't understand. She couldn't grasp what I had in mind, but she was starting to get the idea. I wasn't some pitiful ex-husband begging for a second chance. I wasn't going to get down on my knees and plead for her affection. No, that wasn't my style. The police came by more than once, questioning me about her claims. She seemed to think I was still involved with the car accident that took Bob's life, as if my anger could be misconstrued as guilt. But I didn't care. I had covered my tracks too well. And more importantly, I wasn't the one to blame for Bob's death. That didn't stop Kathy from dragging me into her mess. The lies, the accusations, they were just part of the game she played to keep control. But every time the cops came, I was ready. I was cold, collected, calculated. I even hired someone to follow her, but Kathy was relentless. She never gave up, even though she knew what was happening. The constant surveillance was wearing on her, and I could see the cracks beginning to form. She was unraveling, slowly but surely. It wasn't long before she called me in a panic, screaming at me over the phone, accusing me of threatening her life. My words weren't threats. They were wishes. If she had only known that I wasn't bluffing, she might have thought twice before picking up the phone. But Kathy was too proud to back down. She thought she could intimidate me with her accusations, but I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. I'll admit it. I wanted to break her. I wanted her to snap, to lose everything she had. I knew if I pushed hard enough, I would get what I wanted, my kids. I had a right to them, and Kathy was failing as a mother. She was reckless, careless, and had no idea how to care for them. The police came and I had my lawyer ready. The charge against me, threatening her life, wasn't a real charge, not with the lack of evidence she had. I had been careful, too careful. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. If anything, it had just begun. The tension between Kathy and me reached its peak when I finally got a visit from her parents. They wanted to talk, but I wasn't interested in making peace. There was no going back from this. Her father tried to reason with me. He told me that what she did wasn't right, but I didn't care about their feeble attempts at apologizing. The truth was, Kathy had chosen her path. She had made her bed, and now she would lie in it. And if that meant that her parents had to watch their daughter fall apart, then so be it. The conversation ended quickly. They left my house in silence, their eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. They had no idea what was coming next. Thursday evening arrived, and I was expecting her. I'd been waiting for this moment for weeks. The tension in the air was palpable, and I could feel the satisfaction building inside of me. When the doorbell rang, I knew it was time. Kathy stormed in, furious. She hadn't come to apologize, no. She had come to confront me. She wanted to talk about the house, about the kids, about everything that had gone wrong, but I had no intention of making things easy for her. I poured myself a glass of wine, looking at her as she stood there, seething with anger. "You really are a prick," she spat. But I wasn't concerned. I had already won. Her demands were nothing more than a final attempt to regain control. But it was too late for that. I wasn't interested in anything she had to offer. She had destroyed me, and now I would destroy her. The conversation took a darker turn as I dug into her soul, exposing the depths of her lies and betrayals. She tried to defend herself, but there was no defending the choices she had made. She was a hypocrite, and she couldn't hide it. As the hours passed, I could see the desperation in her eyes. She was realizing, too late, that I wasn't the man she had left behind. I had become something else. A man consumed by rage, a man who had nothing to lose. When the conversation ended, I knew that I had her exactly where I wanted her. She was broken, and it was only a matter of time before I would get my children back. The house was ours, but it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted justice. I had to make Kathy suffer. She had taken so much from me, but now I would take it all back. The fire was the final touch, a piece of the puzzle that would send everything spiraling out of control. I made sure the fire was reported too late, the flames engulfing Bob's house, burning it to the ground. But what they didn't know was that I had made sure everyone was out before the fire started. I couldn't take credit for Bob's death. That was his own mistake, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I did make sure to leave my mark. And now, Kathy would never be able to escape the consequences of her actions. She would live in fear. I would make sure of it. But things started to change. As I sat on my porch, reflecting on everything that had transpired, I couldn't help but feel something shifting inside me. Ellen. She worked for the State Department of Corrections, and I had been forced to meet with her as part of my probation. But over time, something began to grow between us. She was tough, no nonsense, and didn't take crap from anyone. But she also had a kindness in her that made me realize I was capable of more than just anger and revenge. For the first time in a long while, I began to believe that I could move on from the past. The idea of love, real love, felt possible again. Ellen was the one person who understood me. She saw beyond the bitterness and hatred, and she knew what I had been through. She didn't judge me, she helped me face my demons. And maybe, just maybe, there was a future for me after all. In the end, I don't know if Kathy ever figured out that she had been played. If she did, she never showed it. But I didn't care anymore. I had what I wanted. I had hope for the first time in years, and for the first time, I felt like I could be a better man. A man who could move on from the past and embrace the future. As for Kathy, well, she could deal with the fallout. She had caused it after all. And me? I had finally found a reason to smile again.